Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me on this special episode of the Show About the Show podcast. I am your gracious host, as always, Devlin Clark. I am incredibly excited today to be joined by one of my favorite childhood baseball players, as well as I think one of the best and most underrated players in Twins history. Matt Lawton. He's a former two-time American League All-Star, once with the Twins in 2000. We'll get into that and so much more. Matt, thanks for joining me today.
Man, thanks for having me. It's great to be on.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about early life for you. How did you decide that baseball was going to be the sport for you, and when did you decide that, or when did you realize that this might be something you could make some money at and that you were good at?
Yeah, when I was a child growing up, I played all three sports. I played a little bit of basketball, a little bit of football, and a lot of baseball. We didn't have traveling teams or nothing like that, so we'd play in the league and play in the All-Stars. And I didn't really get serious about baseball until my junior year in high school. I was playing with the Gulf Coast All-Stars, and Brett Favre, dad, was our coach, Urban Favre.
Okay.
He told me, he said, man, you might have a chance to get drafted. You're pretty good. And when he told me that, he started to believe in me. So I started believing myself a little bit. And it kind of took off. And I went off to junior college and had 2 good years. And he was right. I did get drafted and by the Twins in the 13th round, and went on to have a pretty good career.
Yeah, you mentioned you were drafted by the Twins in 1991 in the 13th round out of Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College. Did you think as a player that, a lot of players, now it's a little easier, but especially back then, a lot of teams wanted players from big name schools. They didn't do the community college route. Did you think that because you played at the community college, you might not get drafted, or this might not be something? Or did you think, hey, I know I'm good, and I know I'm good enough to play in Major League Baseball?
Well, I was fortunate to play on a pretty good team there at Gulf Coast. We went to the World Series that year, and we're like a traveling all-star band. Everywhere we went, there were a lot of scouts. So right. I knew it was like 6 or maybe 8 of us that got drafted that year. So I knew it was going to be a pretty good chance that I got to get drafted, because everywhere we went, the scouts were there. They were there showing up and watching us play and talking to us after the games. And so I knew it was a pretty good chance that I get drafted. I just didn't know where and when. So that was the thing. On draft day, I was like, man, hopefully I go in the top 5, but it didn't happen. And slipped to like the 13th, and the Twins came and got me.
Now, obviously, there's a lot more rounds back then than there are today, but can you talk about that moment where you got drafted? Who were you with? Where were you with? What was that moment like for you? What was your reaction?
Yeah, I was actually at home at home in Mississippi with my mom and dad, and like I said, we was hoping we'd go top 5. I was always hopefully getting those top 5 rounds, but that didn't happen. When the Twins called me around the 13th, I was still excited, man. I knew I was going to have a chance to play for a great organization, and I'm glad I made the choice to join the Twins.
Did you want to go higher in the 5th round just because of it was going to be more of a financial situation that you'd be able to benefit from? Was that kind of why you wanted to go higher?
Yeah, that was definitely one, because I came from a not so fortunate family. We didn't have a lot growing up, and kind of wanted to take care of my family. But at the same time, my brother was drafted early, and he always told me that, they take care of the guys that get drafted higher. They give them a lot more chances. And so, that's why I wanted to go pretty high, so that the Twins would value me a little bit more. But like I said, everything worked out, and I can't ask for anything better.
Absolutely. You actually made your pro debut in 1992, the next year, with the Gulf Coast League Twins. Can you talk about that first year in pro ball, not just from a professional standpoint of, okay, now I'm a pro baseball player trying to work up to the majors, but also, hey, now I'm away from my family. Now I'm traveling to different cities. What was that like personally, being away, from your family?
That was tough, man. But that was my first time, like you said, being away from home. Being away from my mom and dad. I went off to college, but they would always come up and see me on the weekends, stuff like that. But it was tough. I mean, we definitely didn't make a lot of money. Me and LaTroy Hawkins, we were roommates, and I remember eating a lot of bologna sandwiches, man. We'd walk over to McDonald's on weekends. That was our splurge. Yeah, it was tough though. Minor leagues was tough, but especially in the Gulf Coast League, it was really hot. The pitches were pretty wild, but the competition was good though. And I think I had a pretty good year there, and I think I had to repeat that league, and I wasn't too happy about that.
Why did you have to repeat that league?
I don't know. I had a pretty good year. I think I hit pretty good down there, but I wasn't a good second baseman. They had me at second base, and once they moved me to the outfield, I think my career started to take off a little bit.
Yeah, and that year you are correct. You hit 260. You had 39 runs scored, 45 hits, 8 doubles, 3 triples, 2 home runs, 26 RBIs, 27 walks, and 20 steals. So you were doing a little bit of everything. Was that really where, kind of as a pro baseball player, you felt that like you were able to get your feet wet and say, okay, I can't just be a power hitter, or I can't just be a slap hitter or a pull hitter. I need to be able to do all these different facets of the game. Is that kind of really where that started for you?
I think it really took off in Florida State League for me, in Fort Myers. That's when I first got a chance to play on an everyday basis, because all those years before, I was like a platoon player. I wasn't playing that much. But in Fort Myers, I got a chance to play the outfield pretty much every day, learn to hit for average, learn to hit for a little bit of power, stole a lot of bases. And I kind of figured out what kind of player I wanted to be. But once I got to the major leagues, I think I got a little bit too home run happy. I remember talking to Paul Mahler a couple of times. He said, "Hey man, you got to figure out what kind of player you want to be." Basically he was telling me, "Do you want to be an average hitter? Or do you want to hit for power?" See, I wanted to hit for power, because I was playing right field. I figured, Sammy Sosa and all those other guys hitting for power. I need to hit for power. But looking back on it, I wish I'd have stuck with my game and been more of an average type hitter.
Well, and back then too, the Braves had the commercial that chicks dig the long ball. So I don't blame you for wanting to hit dingers, man.
Yes, sir. Well, back in those days, everybody wanted to hit dingers, man. I think I tell my son all the time now, I was born too early. I wish I played in today's era.
Absolutely.
No doubt.
During the 93 season, you actually played for the Fort Wayne Wizards. That was the Twins Class A affiliate, I believe, at that point. And you hit well. You hit 285, 97 hits, 21 doubles, 3 triples, 9 home runs. So again, you did really well. You were tied for 10th in the league with 15 bases caught stealing, but you had a pretty good year overall. Did that kind of reinforce in you that, like, hey, what I did my previous year is working, and if I just keep doing what I'm doing, I am on the path to the big leagues? Like, did you see a clear path after that second solid year?
After you're right. After Fort Wayne, I think Anthony Bird, he was a guy on our team that year. He led the team, and he was the captain. He was the guy that toted us. But I was a guy that came up with a lot of clutch hits as well. So that kind of let me know that, hey man, I can play right along with these guys. And like I said, the year I went off to Fort Myers and I started to do my thing, and before you know it, I was in the major leagues in no time.
So yeah, and you played in 1994. You were actually in the Florida State League All-Star game. You played with some other former major leaguers in that game. Can you kind of talk about what being named to that game and then what that experience was like? Because that was your first kind of All-Star game of any type in pro ball.
Yeah, it was my first All-Star game. I remember my wife was coming in that day, and we had some sort of function the day before at that All-Star game, and my wife was coming in. We had the function. I was like, man, I'm not gonna be able to make it. And the guy who was running the All-Star game, he was mad at me because I didn't make the function. But I went off. I had a pretty good game that game. I think I should have won the All-Star of the game. But the guy, like I said, the guy was upset. He wasn't gonna give me that All-Star no matter what I did.
Yeah, and in 1994 as well, part of the reason you were on that All-Star team is because you batted in the Florida State League. You batted 300. You hit 300 with 134 hits, 30 doubles, the triple, 7 home runs, 51 RBIs, and 42 steals with 80 walks. One thing I remember about you as in the majors with the Twins is you got hit by a lot of pitches, it seemed like, but you also as a leadoff hitter, And as a left-handed hitter, you always seem to have a really patient eye and a good approach at the plate. Like you wanted to see what the pitcher was going to throw, both for your benefit and I'm assuming for the benefit of the guys batting behind you, whether it be, Knobloch, Brent Gates, whoever. Was that something that the Twins had kind of instilled in you? Is like, hey, we want you to learn how to take pitches so that when you get to the majors, you can learn how to be more of a professional hitter?
I was always even my in my college days, my high school days, I was always a patient hitter, and I laugh with my dad about that all the time now. But the reason why, it took me a while to learn how to hit breaking balls. I was a fastball hitter, and I jump on that first fastball I saw,
Sure.
and but the guys threw me a lot of breaking balls, but I take them. And back in those days, guys threw those breaking balls for balls; they couldn't throw them for strikes, and so it led to me being in a lot of times I was hitting the count, and my dad was like, "Man, how'd you take that pitch?" I said, "Shit, I take it because I couldn't hit it." so it just made it a little bit easier for me. But I think I was right along my third or fourth year in the major leagues. I started to figure out how to hit that breaking ball. I became a pretty much a complete hitter after that.
And it's funny because in 1995, that was the year in September you actually made your MLB debut, and we'll get to that in a minute. But you actually started that season in Double-A, the Eastern League, with the Hardware City Rock Cats, and you had a pretty good year. You hit like 270, and you got called up on September 5th. You made your major league debut September 5th of 1995 against the Detroit Tigers. Can you tell me, personally, what was that moment like for you? I'm sure you probably talked to your wife and said, "Hey, honey, I got the call. I'm going to be a big leaguer." But then, can you also kind of talk about professionally? Like, did that validate in you? Like, hey, everything I've done has been working up to this point. I just need to keep working to continue to get better to stay here.
No doubt, man. I remember that at bat I had against the Tigers that day, and I told all my friends and family, no matter what, the first pitch I'm swinging, man. On the first fastball I see, I'm getting after it. And lo and behold, guy threw me a fastball right down the middle. I was so nervous, I couldn't even swing the bat. I ended up striking out. I think I was like, I was so nervous. But the next day, I got in there and was able to get my first base hit. I was pretty proud of that. But my first at bat, man, I was so nervous, I couldn't do anything.
What was your family's reaction when you found out you got the call? Can you kind of talk about that moment of getting the call where you were playing? Obviously, you were playing in Double-A, but the call, kind of telling your family and how they reacted, because that's a big moment in a baseball player's life when you go from minor leagues to major leagues.
Yeah, it was. I know it was I remember calling my dad first, and he was so excited. He was crying on the phone. I was like, trying to hold back the tears as well. I called my wife was there with me, so I called her at the house. She was back at home in Connecticut. We're at the ballpark I think my manager was Sal Butera. He told me I was going to the major leagues. I was really excited, man. It was like finally a dream come true. Like I said, my dad was my first call. My wife was my second, and they both were really excited.
Absolutely. You mentioned September 6th. Then the very next day was actually at the Metrodome when you got your first major league hit. Walk us through that at bat. Tell us about who was pitching, the situation, your reaction to it, and then what happened when you got that first hit. And I'm sure you probably rounded first base and had Ron Terwilliger there.
I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was maybe Ron Gardenhire, if I'm not mistaken. I can't. It was so long ago, I can't even remember that first hit. But I know it's been on track. I should know who the pitcher was, and I'm sure it was a single for me. Like I said, I was a slap hitter back in those days. Sure. I know it was against the Tigers. I remember my first homer. I can tell you that, but I can't really talk much about that first hit. I guess nothing really stood out.
That was Brian Maxey. It looked like bottom of the sixth. It was your first at bat was a walk, and then actually Mike Myers. It was a single to left field. It advanced Pat Mears to third base. So
it was Mike Myers. He's a lefty. I mean, he was one of those guys that later in his career he was really tough because he became sidewinder. I don't think he was a side homer at that time, so it made it a little bit easier for me.
Right. Yeah. You obviously, you debuted, you went back down, and then you played your first home run was September 28th in Cleveland. Talk about that, because that had to be a big thrill. I mean, that was definitely a big thrill. making your debut and getting your first hit. But man, like you said, you wanted to hit dingers, and you did. Talk me through that first home run.
Man, that first home run was really bittersweet. I don't know if you remember, but that was the day Kirby got hit in the eye.
Yeah,
He got
Dennis
hit by Dennis Martinez that day, and it was really bittersweet because even that night on ESPN, usually they show a guy's first homer. They didn't show it. They was pretty much showing the Kirby getting hit in the eye thing. And but I remember, Dennis Martinez gave me a fastball, and I was able to catch it pretty good. And, man, I was really excited running around those bases that day. Like I said, first homer, man. That one definitely stood out, and one I definitely won't forget it.
Did you do you have the ball from that game? Did you ever get that ball back?
Yeah, I still have the ball. If I was in my office, I would show you, but I'm in my wife's office right now. So
no, you're good. You're good.
Yeah.
So actually in 1998, let's fast forward a little bit. Well, actually, let's talk about that Kirby injury. So Kirby goes down. Obviously a fan like myself and millions of other kids and Twins fans are just absolutely devastated. When he got hit in the face, did you guys as a team know that like this might be the end of it, or were you like, oh, it's Puck, he'll be fine?
Right. I was, definitely, man, because because he came back that year, was taken back to practice later on, and I can't remember if he did come back, or I know that was definitely at the end of the season because it was in September, but I just know that year in spring training, he's basically back. He's swinging the bat really well, and he was back. He, like I said, we thought he was going off and was ready to have a great year. And I remember coming into spring training that year, and it was cut down days, and I was driving into the facility, and Kirby and the doctor was on their way out. I was like, man, I wonder what Kirby's doing. I got to the facility that day, just waiting for Tom Kelly to come get me to send me down to AAA. He never did. Got close to game time, practice time. I was like, man, I guess, I don't know, maybe I made the team. So I get dressed and go out.
Right.
And that's when we later found out that Kirby had glaucoma. Just like that. I was inserted into the lineup and given the opportunity to play.
What was the reaction like in the clubhouse when you guys found out that Kirby had glaucoma? Because I remember the news conference with him sitting there with the bandage on his eye, and he had the shades on, and Tanya sitting next to him, and it was really emotional as a Twins fan. Can you kind of talk about what it was like as a teammate?
It was definitely tough, man. I mean, to see Kirby, Superman, nothing actually could happen to Kirby like that. Right. And like I said, if you were there to see how, the night before he had hit a game-winning homer, right. And then all of a sudden the next day that something like he all of a sudden couldn't see, just everything happened so fast and it was so devastating. But at the same time, I was going to get an opportunity to play in the major leagues, and I was like, and Kirby, I remember Kirby, he'd always run around calling me Wally Pipp. He said, I'm never going to get my job back now because you're playing. But, Kirby, he's always funny, man, always saying funny stuff. And but he was around the locker room. He definitely kept us all upbeat, but it was definitely devastating not to have him on the field.
One of the, I don't know if you witnessed it, but one of my past guests was Mike Trombley, and he was talking. I asked him for a Kirby story, and he talked about the time that he got his first big league check, and he was sitting in the clubhouse. Do you know the story?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And he was looking at it, and Kirby pulled out a wad of money and said, "Hey, Trom, you want me to cash that for you?" Was that who Kirby was?
Oh, no doubt, man. Kirby was definitely that guy. And he not only Trom, he did that to everybody. He all the young guys, man. He was definitely motivated. He'd bring around, he'd show you his check, and then all of a sudden I looked at it and like, God dang, $30,000 for 2 weeks. He's one of those guys that was, man, he'd motivate you with that money and let you know that if you played hard, you definitely had an opportunity to do well in the game.
He also seemed, though, that, not only he seemed to me like he was somebody who would lead by example. Like, yes, he would coach, the new guys coming up, and obviously, the money aspect was part of it, but he also seemed like, I just got done talking to Brian McRae before this, and he said that Kirby was one of the two players that pulled him aside and said, "Hey, if you need anything, you let me know." Did Kirby do that for you?
Oh, no doubt, man. Kirby was one of those guys that, as a young guy coming up, he took me under his wing. He'd always take me out to dinner. took me shopping, bought me my first suit, stuff like that. Yeah, stuff like that. You just, you couldn't thank him enough for. He's a guy that definitely took care of me, and any young guy in the game. He'd always try to give you wisdom, always tell you to play hard, and he looked out for the young guys, and he tried to give back to us everything that he had learned.
And then, so let's get back to you here in 1997. You actually made that team as the fourth outfielder out of spring training. That was, as somebody who was a Twins fan during that time, I can tell you that other than 91, 92, and part of 93, the 90s were not easy to be a Twins fan. And how did TK keep you guys motivated to, like, hey, we've got talent here. Yeah, we might be down Puck, but we've got Molitor, and we've got Todd Walker and Brent Gates and a little bit of David Ortiz and guys like that. Can you talk about how TK helped rally the troops, so to speak?
Oh, no doubt. He was the ultimate motivator, man. He'd come in and he'd always watch the newspaper. He'd always look at the newspaper and look at the odds of the games. And man, we're a huge underdog today. They ain't giving us no chance. He'd come in talking like that. And, that can, if you're any kind of competitor, when you hear stuff like that, you always get a little juice flowing and getting ready to play that day. And I remember days like that. We were playing the Yankees, or Roger Clemens was pitching. Man, we'd get after him because TK would definitely come in and motivate us and let us know that, hey, the odds are against you today. Nobody's giving us a chance. Let's go out and prove these guys wrong. And on a lot of cases, we were able to do it.
You specifically in 1998 on May 9th, you went out and in Yankee Stadium, you proved you showed Andy Pettitte who the man was. You remember that game? Oh
man, I had a lot of good games against Andy Pettitte early in my career. Later in my career, he started to get me. I became pull happy, and he was able to dominate me a little bit. But early in my career, I had a lot of great games against him. I tell my son the other day, I saw he's like, Daddy, Andy Pettitte, did you ever face him? I was like, yeah, I used to hit him pretty good.
You did. Do you remember specifically May 9th, 1998?
I don't. Well, tell me what. You seem to know everything on my numbers there.
You actually hit a grand slam off of Andy Pettitte.
Okay, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, it was at the Metro. Yeah,
the Twins won 8-1 in that game. You kind of struggled to start the 98 season, but you were really playing better as the season went along. Was that at bat against Andy Pettitte and the Yankees? Was that kind of the moment for you that kind of kickstarted that?
Well, I think here we go again with another TK story. He came up to me and it kind of motivated me. He told me that I was pulling the ball too much. Told me to use all the fields. I think a couple at bats before that, I had a couple base hits to the opposite field, and I remember Andy Pettitte. He hung me a cutter on the inside part of the plate, and I was able to hit that homer, that grand slam off of him. That kind of got, like you said, it really kind of got me going, and I started to take off a little bit after that.
TK commented that you had improved well over the season, but you still had more work to do before you would become a winning player. That kind of goes back into that motivation that you were talking about.
Oh yeah, no doubt. TK is kind of like my dad. He'd give you a little credit, but never would tell you exactly how much he was proud of you. Because he wanted you to continue to work hard, and like you said, he wanted the best for all his players. He was definitely a great coach and a great guy to play for.
September 1st, you actually carried it through the rest of that year. September 1st, you hit a game-winning triple against the Rays in the bottom of the 10th. By the end of the year, you actually hit a very respectable 280, 21 home runs, 77 RBIs. You played 100 games defensively in right field. You obviously took over for Kirby. A lot of people don't remember that Kirby actually had shifted to right field at that point in his career. You only made 4 errors and you had 12 assists. And as an American League hitter, you actually were tied for 4th with 15 hit by pitches. Was that something that the Twins were kind of like back then? Like, hey, I don't care how you get on base, just get on base. I don't care if it's a hit, a walk, take one in the side, just get on base.
No, man. Actually, I took a lot of those hits because Peter Gammons, Rick Aguilera, all those guys. They I don't know if you saw that homer off of Andy Pettitte, but I think I was one of the first guys to start that bat flip, man. Nah, yep. And back in those days, those guys didn't like that. They didn't like you flipping the bat and all that stuff. And I remember that day off Andy Pettit. I think I did a bat flip that went all the way out to the mound. You know, he kicked the bat around, and he was pretty upset about it. He watched me run all the way around the bases. But yeah, that's why got hit a lot, because guys didn't like me flipping the bat or staring at the homers, and they take it out on me my next time at the plate.
But as a major league player, you just kind of have to deal with it. You know, if you're you know, as a batter, you got to have the mindset of, hey, if you don't want me to bat flip, don't let me take you yard.
That's right. And I guess as a hitter, he's like, if you don't want to take this hit in the side, don't be bat flipping. Right. But I no doubt, man. It was definitely painful. I took one off the eye, but I don't think Dennis Reyes. I don't think he meant to hit me that time. He was one of those guys. He's really apologetic. But yeah, that was definitely a nasty one that day.
Yeah, we'll get to that definitely. That's actually coming up. That actually happened in 1999. Can you talk about the arbitration process? Because before the 99 season, you were requesting 2.4. The Twins countered with 1.7, and you kind of refused that. Can you talk about that whole arbitration process for people, how it was back then, at least for people who may not be familiar with it, and how it went down? And were there any bad feelings when you did get your contract because you didn't get the amount that you wanted?
Yeah, it was. I tell you what, man, I wouldn't wish that process on anyone. I mean, it was one of those things that we went in. I thought for sure we'd settle. I was like, we'll settle somewhere in the middle. But the Twins are tough, man. They didn't budge. They were like, nah, you taking this 1.7 or leaving. And we kind of, it was definitely like a court case. We took them to court, and we're sitting in there. My agent, he was arguing on a case that I should get higher, you know. And I thought he had a pretty good case. I thought he did a pretty good job, but the Twins did that thing, and they ended up winning that case. And I think, you know, Terry Ryan and myself, we're still real good friends to this day. But I kind of wish that day never happened. Any player that goes through it, I wouldn't wish that upon anybody. I say take whatever they're offering and just try to go play, because it definitely left a lot of hard feelings. It probably led to me getting traded later on in my career. Like I said, it's one of those things that I wish I never had to go through.
Interesting. So you really think it kind of it left a bad taste in the Twins' mouths a little bit?
I think it did. You know, I think it did because they knew that, you know, I was one of those guys who was going to be out for trying to get the top dollar. You know, because you know, and that was the thing in my career. You know, when we played back in those days, you tried to get as much money as you could because you know that your career wasn't going to be as long as a lot of guys. So try to make as much as you can while you can.
So you make 1.7 that year. Obviously, that's not your take home. You've got taxes and agent fees and all that kind of stuff. But what was your first big purchase?
My first big purchase that year, I think I bought my mom a house. You know, she was really excited. Yeah, my mom was excited. Like I said, we come from a family that, you know, my dad worked real hard. He was a logger. He didn't make that much money, but he worked real hard. And we lived in this trailer for my whole child career. And my mom always wanted the house, you know, and that day I was able to get it for her. And like I said, I bought my mom a house before I bought me one. And yeah, she was really excited. I remember that day like it was yesterday.
Do you, what's the first big splurge you made for yourself?
First big splurge I made for myself, probably the next year, I think in 2000, I think I bought me a house. That was the first. Yeah, finally got me a house, and my wife was tired of renting. She's like, hey, we got to get something for ourselves. And, you know, we've been living in this house ever since. So that was the first big splurge for me.
Excellent. So April of 99, you kind of continued your development. You actually hit a grand slam a walk-off grand slam in the bottom of the 11th over the Indians to help the Twins win. Do you remember anything about that?
Man, if I'm not mistaken, that year, man, I was the second game of a doubleheader.
Yes,
the second game of a doubleheader. I was I actually didn't play that game, and I was in the clubhouse. And I was struggling, I was scuffling, and I didn't play. TK gave me the game off, and I was in the clubhouse watching Rocky. I remember sitting there with my batting gloves on, my bat in my hand. And Rocky was my favorite movie of all time. You know, he'd always get me motivated. You know, Rocky was on, and he's fighting Apollo and this and that. He's going through his thing. All of a sudden, they run the club. I was like, Lawton, you're up. Like, oh, God. So I grabbed it, went down, grabbed my head up. I didn't even know the situation. I didn't know the bases were loaded or anything. So I went on, got a couple practice swings on deck. And I remember seeing the first pitch. I got after it. Boom, I got him. First pitch homer. So I'm running around the bases, still don't know the situation. I was like, man, there's a lot of people at the home plate. When I get there, give me a high five and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized, man, that was a grand slam. Later on in that game, I came up with the bases loaded again and hit a double. That was actually the most RBIs I ever had in the game, and I didn't start that game. I think I had 6 or 7. And like I said, I didn't start, but at the same time, it turned out to be a pretty good game.
You talked earlier about eating bologna sandwiches with LaTroy Hawkins, but one of your other really good friends was on that 98 Twins team, and I always had a soft spot for him, Todd Walker. What can you tell me about Todd Walker?
Todd Walker was definitely he was a roommate of mine as well. We lived together in Salt Lake City in AAA, and we always lived together in spring training. He was definitely a guy that eat, breathe, live baseball. We'd go out for 2-mile runs, on random days. And it was like, man, I got to get myself in shape, got to get ready to go. I was like, dang, okay, let's go run for 2 miles. He's one of those things. I never did that. Todd Walker actually instilled that in me, and he was one of those guys, man, that could definitely hit. He's the one that taught me how to hit the breaking ball. He came along, and we'd be at the house. He's like, man, how do you hit those breaking balls like that? He'd walk me through it. Like, man, you got to sit back, got to let it get deep. Most of the time, you got to, if it's only out of part, just take it the other way. You try to pull those, and you end up rolling over. He said, take it the other way, you'll stay on that pitch a little bit longer, man. And from that time on, if I wouldn't have had those injuries in Cleveland, I think I would really became a great hitter because I'd figured it out.
I remember the later part of your Twins career, one of the big things you really almost excelled at. It seemed like every day that you played, you always got an opposite field hit. You were always slapping the ball to left field or down the left field line. Mm-hmm. Was that something too that, in addition to Todd Walker helping you with, was that something that TK and the Twins had always kind of talked about and preached?
No doubt. TK, he actually, after my '98 season, like I said, I hit those 21 homers, and he still tell me, man, you pulling the ball too much. Take the ball to the opposite field, you'll get a lot more hits. I think I want to say in 2000, 2001, right along there, I was able to hit 305, and in that year, I definitely give all that credit to TK because they were pitching. I was hitting in the third position that year. They were pitching me really tough, and without those opposite field hits, I don't think I'd ever survive. So TK he really taught me into using the whole field, and it definitely paid off.
June 8th of 1999 is you referenced it earlier. You're up at bat in Cincinnati or against Cincinnati Reds pitcher Dennis Reyes, who later, ironically enough, played for the Twins. Walk me through that at bat.
Man, it was one of those at bats. I think early in the game, I'd had a few hits, and I was feeling pretty confident up there that he's going to throw me a fastball away. I was like, man, I had a couple. So I'm at the plate looking fastball away, and I still think to this day that I was really set on hitting the fastball away, and then because I had when I saw the ball out of his hand, it's one of those because I would always see the ball out of the pitcher's hand, really, and on that pitch, it just seems like my movements to get out of the way were really slow because I was so set on looking for that ball away, and it was a fastball up and in, and it was, man, I was doing all I could to stay awake. I was just like, man, don't pass out. I don't want my mom to see me on TV passed out. So I remember kicking my feet and everything, and after the ball hit me, trying to stay awake, and man, my eye was swollen up like the elephant man. And when I got into the locker room, it was definitely an ugly sight. And I don't wish that on anybody. It was tough to come back from. That was one of those things that once I got hit, I saw Justin Turner the other day get hit in a spring training game, and I was thinking back then, man, it's gonna be when you get back in that box after getting hit like that, it's tough, man. The first thing you want to think is to get out of the way, and the pitcher's got you, man. If he's got you flinching, he'll throw that sinker down the way, or it'll be almost impossible to hit those away pitches.
And not only that too, but because you were so close to Kirby and it had just happened, the Kirby thing had just happened. Did you have a flash in your head of, oh my God, what if this becomes a Kirby situation? What if I wake up, 2 weeks from now and I can't see and my career's over?
Wow. Yeah, it's funny you say that, but I never thought that. I
Okay.
just knew that I was gonna I couldn't wait to get back in the box. After I got hit, I wanted to play the next day.
Sure.
But yeah, the doctors just told me that I had bones broken in my eye socket, and if I got hit there again, it could be really damaging. And I remember coming back and I had to wear this big football helmet mask. Couldn't see out
Yep.
of that thing, nothing,
I
man.
remember that. Yeah. I
Yeah, I
remember
had
that.
to ditch that really quick.
I was like, wow, we saw Matt Lawton plays for the Vikings. Cool. Cool.
That's right. That's what I was thinking, man. Playing for
But
the gun routes out there.
But you actually only played in 5 rehab games, so it didn't take you long to come back. You came back on July 18th. Was that something that was at the team's discretion, or were you just chomping at the bit to get back?
I think I was chomping at the bits to get back, and but at the same time, I remember when I got back. It was tough, man. It was tough to get in there and be confident like I was at the plate. For every fastball on the inside corner, I was jumping back. I think it took me until the off season. When I went in that off season, I really had some soul searching to do, and really had to get mentally tough again and come back and was able to get in the box with a lot of confidence.
And it's funny you mentioned that. I want to touch on that. You talked about how you wanted to get right back in the batter's box after that happened. Do you think for any player that gets hit in the face like that, or in the head, or basically anywhere above the neck, do you think that it's kind of not, it's just human nature, but also as a baseball player, is it, I don't want to say scary, but is it more of a mental thing to get back in than a physical thing?
It was definitely for me. Like I said, it was more mental for me because physically I wanted to be in there. I wanted to, but at the same time, I was, like you said, I was a little bit afraid, and you can't be afraid when you're at the plate. That's not gonna work. I think that's that year. The ending of that year wasn't good. I was really glad and fortunate that the Twins had faith in me to bring me back because I thought, man, they might just let me go because I was just that bad at the end of the year. But I was able to come back that next year, a little bit more confident, and I think I had a pretty good year the next year.
Yeah, there was actually an incident, if you don't mind talking about it, in Skydome against Toronto, where you had an encounter with a 16-year-old fan. Can you kind of talk about what happened, what led up to that, and then what happened after?
Yeah, the fan. I was going over to catch a fly ball over in the left. I was playing left field that day, and the fan kind of said something that I didn't like, and actually, to be honest with you, I was way away from it. I was nowhere near close to him, but I, kind of spit. I spit at him, but not nowhere near on him. It was to the point that I wasn't even on the warning track. Because I kind of like, what I mean, to let him know that, hey, I didn't like what you just said.
Right.
But he went on and said I spit on him, and in Canada that's a big deal. The police were there waiting for me afterwards. Luckily, there was video to show that I was nowhere near him and it didn't get on him. Because if it would have got on him, I would have definitely been in trouble. They were ready to take me to jail that night.
You could have potentially faced assault charges, but nothing was ever filed. Yeah.
Yeah. They went on and looked at the video, and like I said, I wasn't even close to him. But at the same time, it was definitely one of those things I shouldn't have done. My mom wasn't happy about me that day. But it was one of those things that, like I said, I felt that the kid actually came to the game. I apologized to him the next series in, and because he came in with a big sign that said "spit here." I kind of walked up to him and told him I'm sorry, this and that, man. I'm glad you didn't, nothing happened. And I don't know if he ever came to the game again, but he never brought that sign back again.
That's funny though. That's funny.
No doubt. Yeah. He tried to make a big deal of it.
So let's fast forward a little bit. 2000 was probably your best year overall as a Twin. Not only did you make the All-Star game, but you also stated that your eye socket had fully healed after the hit by pitch. Did you really feel like that off season and going into the 2000 year, you were really kind of back to being Matt Lawton, like your full strength? You didn't have the any mental thing from the hit by pitch. You put the incident in Toronto behind you. You were kind of ready to go.
I was ready to go, man. That was a year I felt like I had a lot to prove to myself, and to prove to to that I could still play in the league. Like I said, the year before was really tough getting hit, and I did a lot of work that off season to get ready, and it definitely paid off. I felt like I had a really good year, and but actually the year after that, I think it was 2001, is when I was hitting like 326 at the break. As it was the best I'd ever felt at the plate, and but then again after the All-Star game went on, I came back. I couldn't hit nothing, but it's a couple times as a Twin I felt like I was definitely deserving to be a major leaguer, and I definitely was looking back on it. It was pretty much one of the highlights of my career, I think.
So in early April, in 2000, Eric Milton is pitching, and you failed to catch a ball hit by Carlos Beltran in the 7th inning that would have kept his perfect game alive. Did you just lose it in the lights of the dome?
Man, it's one of those. I can't. Was it one of those line drives in the lights? I can't remember. If I failed to catch it, most likely it was, man. I had a lot of those in the dome that was right in the lights, line drives. And I kind of practiced that in pregame, but they wouldn't have all the lights on. In pregame they would have certain blocks of lights, so you kind of get in there. But then when the game started, man, those lights were. That's everybody claimed that the roof was tough. Those bank of lights in the right field was the toughest for me.
And for people who don't know, in the Metrodome, you had kind of the white/cream colored dome roof, and you had the lights. And then if it was a day game, you had the sun hitting everything and coming out. Was it virtually impossible during a day game to catch balls out there?
I'll tell you what was the worst: when it was a day game and it was raining outside. I don't know what was about that combination. But I don't know what it was. But those days were like, oh man, here we go. It's raining outside. Me and Tori would just look at each other. You got my back today, dog. I was like, it's like, no, you gotta have my back. Because I knew it was gonna be tough. It was like every day game we played and it's raining out, one of us was gonna lose the ball in the roof.
Well, I think you guys both did okay. He ended up winning 8 Gold Gloves, and you made the All-Star team that year. So I think it worked out.
No doubt, it worked out.
Let's talk about that. So as a major leaguer, as a minor leaguer, you'd made the Florida League All-Star game, and we had touched on that. But you actually had a really, really, really strong first half for the Twins. Tell me about what it was like, one, getting the call or the announcement that you were going to be the Twins representative at the All-Star game, and then what was that All-Star game experience like? Because that's something that not every player gets to experience, and for you yourself, it was your first of 2. So what was that like for you?
Man, I just remember walking into the clubhouse, man. And I've always been a big fan of the game.
Right.
So walking into that clubhouse and you seeing guys like Derek Jeter, Manny Ramirez, I was in awe. Because playing against those guys is one thing, but being in the same locker room and playing alongside them was a different thing. And I think that's the thing, man. Just meeting Sammy Sosa, that was a year him and Mark McGwire were going at it, I think, and that was just the highlight. Playing in that year, the All-Star game was in Atlanta, the closest you could get to my house, here in Mississippi. So it was definitely a great experience that I definitely cherished, and we had a great time, great weekend that week.
So you're out on the field, you're doing pregame introductions. Obviously, you were a reserve player. What was that moment like when you hear the public address announcer from the Minnesota Twins, outfielder Matt Lawton? Like, what are you feeling in that moment? Is that a sense of pride and accomplishment that, hey, I've done it as a major leaguer, but there's still more to do? Walk me through what you were feeling.
It was definitely one of those feelings that I want to say that year they allowed the kids and the family to be on the field. My wife was out there, my daughter, and it was a great feeling. Knowing that everybody back in Mississippi probably was watching me. Because All-Star game is definitely huge. Everybody that night, for some odd reason, everybody watches that, and just for me called out. My name was called out that day, from the Minnesota Twins, like you said. I was definitely it was a great bundle of joy, man. I felt like I definitely made it, and I was just I felt so proud to be there, and like I said, to hear your name called out, it was a great feeling.
One question that I have kind of as it relates to today's game, but also the All-Star game, I'd like to get your opinion on this. Baseball struggled to kind of grow the game outside of America, other than kind of the Dominican Republic and in certain places. There's certain places overseas where it's popular, Japan and that kind of thing. But with how popular the World Baseball Classic has been, do you think Major League Baseball should think about making the All-Star game the Team US versus Team World?
Man, I tell you what, man, I wouldn't be totally opposed to that. Maybe like you said, the All-Star game being kind of like what the WBC is. Break the boys up and let them play against each other at the middle of the year. Because right now those guys, man, I don't know how they're doing it. They're going out there putting on a show, and they're not quite ready yet. And but at the same time, man, I can only imagine how good they would be at the midseason mark. So is what I'm saying. I know every night, like the other night against, I think it was it Venezuela? The United States. Man, that was a game. That was a game to watch right there. It was fun. It was a fun game to watch. It was exciting to the very end. And like I said, I just could only imagine how good it would be if it was during the midsummer, like you said.
Yeah, Trey Turner pulled a Matt Lawton and hit a ninth inning grand slam and helped the U.S. win.
Right. I mean, I'm sitting there watching that, and I was like, man, 0-2 count, and then the pitcher gives him a fastball right down the middle. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I was like, man, he didn't mean to throw that. He didn't mean to throw that pitch there. I promise you that.
Now, as somebody who played for the Mets later in their career, obviously, but you did play for the Mets, you know what the fans and media in that city can be like. What do you think the fan reaction and the media reaction is to Edwin Diaz's injury? Because he got injured coming off the mound, and he wasn't even playing. He was walking off the mound, and he hurt his knee, and now he's out for the year. Can you talk about what that's like in New York?
Oh man, if anything could happen, it's going to happen in New York. The Yankees, especially with the Mets. It's like, man, here we go again. We're primed to win. We got everything. We got everything in order. We got our starting pitchers. We got a bullpen put together. We got a closer set for that. Go out to have a great year, and then something like this happens. Man, that's definitely a punch in the gut. But the Mets, I think they're still gonna find a way because like I said, that starting pitch is so good. They got some really good hitters. But man, not to have Diaz at the back end of that thing, that's gonna hurt. He's a guy when that music starts playing, man, he comes out there, everybody gets pumped up. He's a guy that man, it's lights out. He's kind of like Mariano Rivera at the end. Mm-hmm. So they're definitely gonna miss him, but they gotta have to find a way, man. They got to find somebody else to step up and kind of fill his shoes. But it's gonna be tough, like I said. Poor Mets fans, man. They've been waiting a long time, and they're definitely was one of the ones you were picking to win it, but now I don't know. Maybe the Padres now might have to be that team. So we'll see how it goes.
That Diaz injury, man, that equates to a $21 million injury.
No doubt.
So that's not a cheap injury either.
Not at all, man. He's like I said, he's electric on the back end of that thing, and I just to see him go down like that, after just out there celebrating a little bit, and just, here we go again. Then now maybe no celebrations anymore. The game was just getting to the part where the guys are having fun, but you got to be careful, man.
Absolutely,
guys like that.
Absolutely. So in 2000, on the second half of the year, that was the year you hit 305. The thing I remember the most about your 2000 year, in addition to being the all-star for the Twins, you were a doubles machine that year, dude. You hit 44 doubles, and I remember a lot of them being to left field or left center field or down the left field line on the Twins bullpen side at the Metrodome. Was that something again that you would kind of focus on with TK? Like, okay, now I'm an all-star, but now I want to show that I'm more of a complete player. So
no doubt. It was one of those things that, like I said, it's all-star with TK, always preaching, take the ball the other way. But like I said, that year I was hitting in the third spot. They were trying to pitch me tough. You know, they were trying to throw me a lot of things down in the way, and I really worked hard at it that year. And, hey, I'm going to take what those pitchers give me, and it definitely paid off.
February 2001, actually in 2000, after that year, you were actually named the Twins Player of the Year that year. I don't know if they had the Diamond Awards then, but that's what they have now. But you were actually the Player of the Year. I'm just curious, did you get anything other, like, was there a plaque or was there anything?
No, there was nothing. I didn't actually. I wouldn't have known it, but I think I read it on the internet or in some paper or something. Because I didn't even, Twins didn't make it.
Didn't even tell you?
No, they didn't tell me. They didn't tell me. It was just I you know how you have those I can't remember what the media guides. It came out maybe the next year in that. It was one of those ways that I finally saw it, but nobody really recognized it. And they didn't tell me anything about it, so I didn't get a chance to.
Okay, so February 2001 rolls around, and Terry Ryan had come out for years and said, we're not trading Matt Lawton. We're not trading Matt Lawton. And there were other reports out there that you were being shopped or that the Twins were listening to offers. Even TK came out and said that he didn't expect you to be traded under any circumstances. And you ended up getting traded at the deadline that year for Rick Reed to the Mets. What was that move like, going from the only organization you'd ever known? Do you think that trade kind of happened too a little bit because of what you had talked about earlier?
Yeah, I think so. It was for me, it was devastating. Leaving Minnesota, leaving all my friends, LaTroy Hawkins, Eddie Guardado, Torrey Hunter, all those guys, Jock Jones. I remember that night, and we actually just gotten to Toronto. Had to go through customs and all that. It took you forever to get there. And then all of a sudden, they called me that night. And I think it was 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning. Told me I gotten traded to the Mets. And, man, it was devastating. I was laying in my room. All the guys came down. I don't know how they heard about it, but they came down to visit me, tell me goodbyes. It was tough, man. It was one of those things that, because you grew up as a Twin. It's like now I got to go play for a different organization. Yeah. I thought I was going to be excited to do it, but it was one of those things that I guess I really never got over.
When you got traded, you ended up actually splitting time with like 4 other Mets outfielders. There was Joe McEwing, Kiyoshi Shinjo, Jay Payton, and Benny Agbayani, I believe. So playing time was going to be difficult. How did you got 1 hit and 4 at bats on your debut with the Mets on the 13th? Can you talk about just kind of that whole situation? You said, devastating, obviously, going from the only team you'd ever known to the Mets, but at the same time, you also have to, you're a professional, it's part of the business, part of the game. Can you talk about that adjustment?
Yeah, it was one of those things that it was tough getting over, man. Like I said, you go into battle with different guys, like you said, the Shinjos of the world, Jay Paytons. It was hard to, because I was one of those quiet guys. It was hard for me to it took me years to get to know Torrey Hunter and those guys, but now I got to get in there and try to learn new friends, the guys that we're going to go out and compete with. It was definitely a tough situation. Like I said, I didn't play well at all. I definitely missed the Metrodome because I got a lot of infield hits. Going to New York, the grass was thick. Hit the ball on the ground, and the grass would just eat it up. Yeah, a lot of hits that were taken away that way. It had a lot of balls I hit to right field or so whatnot that didn't travel the way it did in the Metrodome. It was definitely that night air in New York was tough, man. It was tough to. It was definitely something that like I said, I was glad for the experience and glad for the chance to play for the Mets, but it was one of those things that I didn't do too well.
Let's talk a little bit about 2001. Obviously, the second half of the year, everybody knows what happened on 9/11. Can you kind of talk about, from a player's point of view, what the team said to you guys, what baseball said to you guys, and then also kind of just being back for that first game with obviously President Bush throwing out probably the most perfect first pitch in history. Just can you talk about that whole kind of situation?
Yeah, man. I remember on 9/11, we were in Pittsburgh. I was playing with the Mets at the time, and my phone was ringing off the hook. you know, and I woke. I was always a late riser. I wake up around 11 o'clock, and I had so many messages. I looked at my phone like, man. I told my wife was there with me. I said, babe, I got a lot of messages. Something's wrong. And that day, just turn on the TV and you're seeing all the devastation. And I remember the Mets coming up, and because we're downtown Pittsburgh, near this building that they thought maybe was under attack. So we had to move. We moved all the way to the outskirts, and it was scary. And the next day, I want to say we drove back into because they canceled all the games and stuff. And the next day we drove back into New York, and there's a story I tell. I tell a lot of my friends now. We're in this whole, because when I was in New York, I just got traded. I was staying at a hotel, and there's three guys actually. They were next door to me, and when I walked by their room, I could see they were, they weren't American, and I told my wife, I said, man, those guys look suspicious. They look, they look like they were up to something. It was 15 minutes later, man. They evacuated the hotel.
Oh.
They evacuated the hotel, and me and my wife were going down the fire escape. She's got the baby, and she's running down the fire escape. Here I am. I'm joking around. Oh man, look at that! I scream at her. Boom, 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 boom. She's coming downstairs. She's running real fast. Oh, no, I'm joking. You gotta drop the baby. Nothing's going on. But we get outside, and look. Here we go. Those three guys I just saw that were next to my room. They were putting those guys in the police thing. They were eating paper. They were swallowing evidence or whatnot. So it was, man, those are the type of things we had to deal with in New York.
That's great. You actually only played in New York the second half of the 2001 season. You got traded in the offseason to, I believe, the Cleveland Indians. And you actually got traded for Roberto Alomar. He was actually part of that deal. You actually came back to the Dome in 2002. You played April 18th against the Twins, and you separated your right shoulder diving for a ball in right field. What do you remember about that?
Yeah, man, it was, I wanted to beat the Twins that year, man. I was, like I said, I wanted to do whatever it takes to beat the Twins, and it was just one of those things that, golly, man. My shoulder had been hurting for years, to be honest with you, and it was one of those things that probably was more. It was good for me that I finally was able to get it fixed after that. But it was one of those situations that, like I said, the Twins were on my list. I wanted to beat them, and I was giving everything I had to try to do just that.
And you actually ended up having to sit out the rest of that year. That was the year you actually ended up undergoing arthroscopic surgery to repair a torn labrum. What's that like when you have a season-ending surgery? Being a ball player who just eats, breathes, lives baseball, to not be able to have your body physically do it, to not be able to be around the guys, or to be around them but not be able to play. What's that like, more so mentally than physically?
Yeah, mentally it was tough. Like I said, it was really tough to be away from the game, but physically it was one of those things that I needed to get done. Like I said, my shoulder had been hurting me for years, but I'd always try to play through it. And I remember the doctor told me, he said, this thing has been going on for years. He's like, it's been hurting you. I said, yeah. He said, this is the worst labor I've ever saw. He said it was split open like a, he said it was terrible, he said. But at the same time, we were able to get it done, and I was able to play a few more years.
You kind of had a really up and down career, with the Indians. When you were healthy, you were relatively productive, but it was staying healthy. You had the torn labrum, you rehabbed that. You jammed your middle finger in 2003 that put you on the DL. Did you just feel like it was just a run of bad luck, or did you feel like maybe your body was starting to break down after all the wear and tear?
It was definitely one of those things that my body was breaking down. And I think I talked to you a little bit earlier about, if I wouldn't have had those injuries in Cleveland, I think I would have been a really, really productive player, because I'd figured the game out. I figured out how to hit the breaking ball. I figured out what the pitchers were trying to do to me, but I couldn't. I go out there, man, and I started. with the middle finger thing. I was swinging the bat as well as I probably swung in my career. I was starting to get going, starting to get rolling. I swing at a fastball and my finger dislocated. I was like, the bat was coming out of my hand. I guess I tried to hold on to it, and it just dislocated. And these weird things started to happen like that. I come back from that, and then I hurt my knee. I come back from that, and like I said, then something else would happen. It's just thing after thing, and I guess it's pretty much letting me know that, hey, it's coming to the end of your career. It's time to retire.
But it wasn't all bad in 2003. You actually got to be teammates with Milton Bradley, who was one of the great characters during his career. And in 2003, people confused him and you a lot. And he was quoted as saying, I mean, give me Matt Lawton's paycheck. I'll be Matt.
Yeah, at that time I was making that Kirby Puckett money, man. I was feeling pretty good, and Milton was up and coming. He was trying to make a name for himself in the game, and everywhere we'd go, man, somebody would call him Matt Lawton or hand him a Matt Lawton card to sign, and he used to get upset about that, because like I said, he was doing really well that year. He's one of the best right-handed hitters in the game at the time, and he wanted people to know who he was. He didn't want to be confused with me at all.
In 2004, you had filed a report with the Philadelphia Police Department regarding theft from your hotel room. You were in Philly with the Indians, and you had reported about $117,000 worth of jewelry stolen. Can you talk about that and kind of what happened?
Yeah, man. We were just coming from spring training, and I had all my jewelry with me. It was one of those years, down south. I'm not. I don't know if you remember the Hot Boys or Lil Wayne and those guys. Yeah. They were pretty big, and
absolutely.
I guess I wanted to be a hot boy, so I was walking around with a lot of jewelry on, man. And that just came up, and I remember Mike Piazza and those guys asked me, did I want to go to Atlantic City to go gambling? And I was like, yeah, man, because I love to gamble as well. So we went out there and came back, and man, my room was all tore up, and my bags were gone. And it was like, man, that was my first time ever getting robbed. I didn't know what to do. I was like, man, I didn't know who to call. And I can't even remember who the first thing I called. I probably was my wife. She probably told me what to do. Yeah.
Did they ever end up finding out who did it? Did you get it back?
No, I never got that stuff back. But luckily, my wife had got it insured, and I was able to get some of the insurance money back from it. So it wasn't as bad as I guess it could have been.
Absolutely. So at the end, your Indians career obviously was kind of up and down. You got traded in the off season in December of 2004 to the Pirates for Arthur Rhodes. Dave Littlefield, the GM at the time, said, Lawton, we think is a good fit with this move. This is somebody that'll be able to help our offense. You were the leadoff hitter. Was that the position that or the spot in the batting order you felt most comfortable?
I like leadoff, but that year I remember I talked to a lot of the guys, and my manager, they were telling me how he didn't like guys to swing at the first pitch. So I'd go up there, I'd take a lot of pitches, and I just felt like that year, me not knowing the pitches in the National League, not knowing what their breaking balls are going to do, not knowing how they like to pitch, I felt like it was a little difficult, because I'd go up there and take that first pitch, next pitch they come back with a breaking ball. Now I'm down 0-2. It made it a lot tougher, and I think that year with the Pirates was, like I said, I wasn't as aggressive as I should have been. Going back on it, I wish I would have been a little bit more aggressive, swung at a lot more first pitches, because man, they were laying those fastballs in there. I was just looking at them every game. Like, dang, I want to hit that pitch, but like I said, the manager didn't want me to do it, so I tried to be a team player.
I don't know if you know this, but did you know that as of now, you still currently hold the PNC Park record for the longest home run by a Pirates player?
Wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I remember I hit one.
463 feet against the Rockies on May 20th, 2005.
Wow, I remember that hit. I remember that going into the bouncing into the river back there, but I know I got it pretty good, and it was a good shot. But I didn't know I still held the record. That's pretty cool.
What were you looking for that pitch?
I wasn't. I was one of those first pitches that that actually I'd seen in a while, fastball on the inside corner, and it kind of surprised me. And I didn't really, I just remember just reacting to it. I didn't think I got it that good. I didn't think it, because I didn't get extended. I didn't get, I wasn't looking for it, but it ended up traveling a long way.
You actually ended up getting traded at the deadline that year, despite the Pirates having said, hey, this is somebody that we think can help us. But you got traded to the Cubs in 2005, July 31st. And the Cubs at that time had a certain second baseman that you were pretty familiar with and you knew pretty well.
Yeah, reunited with Walt right there. I remember he was one of the guys that came and picked me up from the airport. It was good to see him. I thought, man, I was like, man, here we go. It's gonna get me going, and I thought I was gonna go out and have a pretty good career with the Cubs. And like I said, just didn't put it together. Something about those second halves later in my career, I was having trouble. I'd kind of wear down, started to get tired a little bit, and just couldn't put it together in Chicago.
You got traded after that season during the season, August 27th, to the Yankees. Of all teams, you ended up going to the Yankees. Joe Torre basically said it was a depth move. What do you remember about your time in New York?
Man, it was time in New York was real short. I felt like I was a man. That, to be honest with you, that's the one team I've always wanted to play for. I wanted to be a Yankee. I wanted to see what that was all about. I wanted to see how those guys went about their business. And it was a lot of fun, man, watching Jeter going out there doing his thing, watching Bernie Williams. He was always one of my favorite hitters. And then actually to get to the playoffs that year, I was like, man, here we go. I might have a chance of finally playing a playoff game. Nothing I got a chance to do in Minnesota. But, things didn't work out. Like I said, just something about that second half, man. I just couldn't put together later in my career.
2005 was also an interesting year for you. In November, it was announced that you had tested positive for PEDs. You were suspended for 10 days by Major League Baseball. You were a free agent at the time, so you would have had to start serving that at the start, of the 2006 season. And that was actually, the test was actually taken after you were acquired by the Yankees. And your quote was, "I made a terrible and foolish mistake that I will live with and regret for the rest of my life. I take full responsibility for my actions. I'm truly sorry and deeply regret it." Can you talk about what the decision was to take that? Was that something that other guys were taking? Was it something you had been told was safe, or was it something that you just weren't aware of what was being put in your body?
Man, I was I'll tell you, we're actually leaving. We were leaving Oakland that day. And I was walking to the field, walking to the bus. And there's this guy that was coming up. I'm looking at him. I knew the guy. I was like, man, I wonder what this guy's doing here. I'm like, what I asked him, like, what are you doing here? And he's like, man, I'm here dropping off some stuff to a couple players. The guys getting ready for the playoffs. And remember, I told you at this time, man, I was dead tired. So we take BP, and I couldn't hit the ball at the infield. I was like, man, 4 down, late in the season. Guys getting ready for playoffs, maybe this is what they do. This is how the guys stay strong during the season. That's that's me thinking. So right. I was like, yeah, okay, let me get some of that. You're gonna see what you got. He said, I think this will be great for you. He told me, he's like, what are you feeling? I told him, man, I'm feeling tired. I feel like I got no strength. He's like, here, this stuff here will work good for you. It'll work quick. It'll get in your system. And before you know it, you'll feel great. So I went home that Monday, I started taking it. I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday. And I'm feeling great. I'm feel like myself again, and lo and behold, it wasn't the next day after I hit the homer in New York. I think one of my 2 homers in New York, they came and popped me. The drug test guy came along and was like, hey, it's time. Because I never gotten the drug test ever in my career. That was the craziest. That was the craziest. I never ever gotten the drug test, no matter how hot I was, no matter what. So for me, I'm thinking, man, this is a setup. It had to be. Right. You know what I mean?
I'm going to walk off home run in New York, and now they're going to pop me.
Now they're going to pop me. But I tell you what, I went from a guy that wasn't able to hit the ball at the infield in BP to guys hitting the ball in the upper deck. Even the pitchers are like, well, what the fuck I'm sorry, but what the heck are you doing? You know what I mean? So it was one of those things that I guess it was totally obvious. And they were like, oh, we got to test this guy. Something's going on wrong.
2006 was was a tough year for you. It was the last year of your professional major league career, but in March 2006, the Upper Midwest suffered just a devastating loss. Obviously, with the terrible loss of Kirby Puckett passing away from a stroke. Can you talk about? You were teammates with Eddie Guardado on the Mariners that spring training. Can you talk about you and Eddie's reaction to finding out the news, kind of coming back to Minnesota or finding out that whole situation and how you reacted?
It was definitely devastating, man. It was one of those things that you hear it and it's like, not Kirby, but it was one of those things that everybody was afraid of, because I hear Terry Ryan's like, man, Kirby's not taking care of himself. He's getting really big. He's drinking a lot. He's getting, he's overweight. But there's one of those things. But still, it still wouldn't think it would happen to Kirby. But when you got the news, it was definitely sad. And me, Eddie, I felt like it was a third guy who was there. We felt like we had to come back to Minnesota, be at the service. And I remember us taking a plane back and going to the service, and it was really sad, man. Just seeing it all unfold. And like I said, even to this day, Kirby is one of those guys I think about all the time. Man, he was a great dude, and he helped me a lot in my career. And we definitely miss him a lot.
Absolutely, he definitely is missed a lot. He was my favorite player. He's the reason I became a Twins fan. I was 7 years old in 1991, and I remember just throwing my hands up in the air and cheering when he hit the home run in the World Series. And
no doubt.
I unfortunately never got to meet him, but his just boyhood and childlike enthusiasm and fun and love for the game was something that, as a boy in St. Paul living at the time, that I loved.
No doubt about it. Where'd you get that shirt from, by the way? Did you have it made?
I don't know where I got it. I got it a couple of years ago online somewhere. For people that aren't watching on YouTube, it says Air Puckett, and it's him jumping up against the fence. If I find the link, I'll send it to you.
Definitely, man. I want to definitely give me one of those. That's nice.
This looks pretty fresh. These things are pretty fresh. They're pretty nice.
That's pretty fresh.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
No doubt.
I want to do a little word association. If you don't mind, I've taken up a lot of your time. I do appreciate it. Let's do some word association. Just give me the first word, phrase, sentence that pops into your head with the words. Terry Ryan.
Great dude.
Tom Kelly.
Awesome motivator.
Tony Oliva.
What a hitter.
Another left-handed hitter, Rod Carew.
Classy.
Okay. Harmon Killebrew.
Little man with pop. I can't believe how tall he is. I thought he was when I first met Herman Killebrew, I thought he was going to be a big, huge guy like Herbeck. Man, he had big arms and big forearms and stuff, but he was small in stature, kind of like Kirby.
Torrey Hunter and Jock Jones.
Oh, my boys. Two best teammates I've ever had right there. Those are my guys.
LaTroy Hawkins.
Best friend in the world.
Big Poppy.
Funniest teammate ever.
I don't know if you were there during it, but I have a friend on Twitter who ended up getting a jar of peanut butter signed by, I believe it was Corey Costin. Can you tell that story about that prank?
Oh man, that was one of the best pranks ever. That year, I'll tell you another good one. But that year, there was all kind of pranks going on. Corey Koski that year, we were in Kansas City, and when he put that peanut butter in his, I think it's an underwear or in his pants. But it was fun. It was the funniest thing to watch when he found out what was going on. And Poppy was one of those guys. He'd never get mad about anything. So he took it with a grain of salt, and he had a lot of fun with it. I thought he was gonna get really upset because it was one of his suits he messed up, but he laughed about it, and they had a lot of fun with that.
What was it like for you to see former teammates, not just David Ortiz, but Doug Minkiewicz. And Doug, I've got Doug scheduled to be on the podcast here in a couple of weeks. What was that like for you to see them win a couple of World Series with the Red Sox after knowing what they'd been through with Minnesota, being so close, David getting released, Doug getting traded, but then also breaking that curse?
Wow, that was man. I was just, I think I was I don't know if it was the first one, but I went out to Colorado to see the Red Sox win, and it was just, man, it just was fun to see David, to go out there and do as well as he was doing. He was one of those guys that you always pull for. I remember his first at bat. I probably remember his first at bat better than I remember mine. He came up with it, against the Cubs. He hit a double in the gap, and it was like, man, look at this dude. He's gonna be a player. He's gonna be a big league player one year. And then just to go out and see him do everything he did, man, just see him put it all together in Boston, it was definitely fun to see.
That's still a pain point here in Minnesota. It seems like every athlete that we have that goes to Boston, whether it be him or Randy Moss, ends up winning a championship.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, especially with both of those guys, man. I don't know how you let Moss get away, and then how do you let Poppy get away? But I don't think Poppy would have ever been Poppy, man, if he wouldn't have got with Manny Ramirez. Man, that's the thing, when you're playing with good players, kind of like me, for example. I feel like if I was on one of those teams where when I was at my best in my career, if I was a leadoff hitter, say for the Red Sox or for the Yankees, with guys behind me that you could do damage, I think I would have been a lot better player. But then when you put when I was at the height of my career, I'm hitting third in a lineup when I probably should have been hitting first or second.
Right.
It makes a big difference. Like you watch Jeter. You watch Jeter do his thing in New York, hitting second. With Bernie Williams behind him. Whoever Knobloch in front of him. I remember when Knobloch was in front of me, and Malter was behind me. Oh my goodness! It was like I was getting fastballs like crazy.
Right.
That year I hit 278 with 21 homers, and next year I'm hitting third. So I think if we'd have continued with me hitting second, Mahler hitting third, and there's no telling what kind of numbers I would have put up.
Speaking of word association, back to that, Paul Molitor.
Wow. God, man, how can you put that in one word, one or two words?
Words
Man,
or sentence. Words or sentence.
Okay. Words. I mean, smartest.
Yeah.
Most intelligent. I mean, Hall of Famer. I mean, he's all that. He's the smartest baseball player that I've ever been around. Well, I don't know. A-Rod was pretty smart as well, but he was pretty. He knew a lot of stuff about the game that, golly, man, he had so much knowledge. It was unbelievable.
Was he one of those guys? I hear baseball players talk about it on occasion. There's players who view the game at a different level or in a different way. Was that kind of how Paul was? Did he just see things before they happened and was able to prepare for them?
He was able to prepare for it. He knew what was coming before. Hey, this is how he's gonna pitch it this time. He's gonna lead you off with a breaking ball. I'm like, how do you know that, man? So you go up there and be like, oh, there it is. And I look over there and told you. He's one of those guys that, I don't know how he did it, but he knew the game, man. He in and out. That's why he probably became a manager, because he was just that good at it.
Ken Griffey Jr.
The best of my time. He was so fun to watch, man. He could do it all. Great arm, great speed, and he could swing it. He's the best at it. He's the best I ever seen do it.
I always have this debate with my friends. Do you think Ken Griffey Jr. had the best swing in baseball history?
Best left-handed swing, no doubt. No doubt.
Because I always think it's either him or Ted Williams. I always like Ted Williams' swing.
Yeah. Ted Williams' swing is good, but not as pretty as Griff's.
Right.
Manny Ramirez, I think, the best right-handed hitter.
Okay.
Yeah, he had the sweetest right-handed swing, to me.
Frank Thomas.
Wow. Big man. And you wouldn't think a big man like that would be able to hit for average. Because, man, he's going to be a big bopper. But to be able to hit for average the way he did, I thought was incredible. And he did that in college. He did it all his whole career. He was able to go out and hit for average and power, man. I thought that was just incredible.
The incredible thing that I always found about Frank Thomas was not so much that he hit for average and power, but how many walks he took a year. You know, for guys back then, those big guys were either kind of all or nothing, home run, strikeout, your Richie Sexton and your Adam Dunn kind of guys. And
Yeah.
Frank Thomas is drawing 150 walks a year.
Yeah, but back in those days, man, they didn't have this little box like they have now. Those umpires back in our days, they were, you know, if you wasn't Frank Thomas, Derek Jeter, everything was a strike. You know, but then again, with those guys, you had to throw the ball right down the middle. And those, I've wished, you know, probably what the game is going to become to. When I was playing, they'd have this computer for a strike zone. Because, I mean, it was so unfair when we played. You know, we play in New York. I mean, you go there and play, nothing's ever televised. So umpires don't really get in trouble. They're calling pitches that are not even close to strikes. You know, I'm a guy, I know the strike zone. Like, come on, man, that's not even close. And it happened so many times in my career that, like I said, if we'd have had, you know, if it would have been like it was now, oh man, our averages would have been a lot higher.
Sammy Sosa.
Wow. King of Chicago, huh? Yeah. he can do it, man. He's one of those guys, man. He went out and played really hard. I used to love to watch him run from you know, at the beginning of the game to right field. You know, he'd run really hard, man, get the crowd all excited. He was
carrying the
fun.
Flag out there. Yeah.
Oh, man, no doubt about it. And then hit for power like he did. He put it all together late in his career. You know, like you said, he was doing the PEDs, but at the same time, you know, those guys, man, those guys that you know, I was amazed, you know, to read some of the stuff that I read now, knowing that guys were doing that during the season, and I didn't, like I said, when I did it, to see how I just wish. Well, I don't know if I wish I did it more. I wish the game was fair. They'd been a little bit more. Lately, they would have been a little bit more aggressive with it to make it where it wasn't so tough.
Have you ever considered how amazing it is that Sammy Sosa hit 20 home runs in a calendar month in Chicago in '98? Like that's one of the more unheard of kind of things in baseball. I mean, you get guys going on home run tears, but generally not 20 in a 31-day period. Like, how hard is that to do?
No, man, that's got to be. I remember. I think that was one of the first years we had interleague play, and he came through Minnesota, and he was on that tear. It was during the time he was on it, man. He was just to watch him just hit balls, man. Like, golly, how did he hit that? You know, he hit balls into the opposite field. I think he hit a homer in the opposite field that day. Like, man, he just went upper tank in right field the way I do poolside. You know, he was incredible that year, man. And and like I said, it's one of those things that people don't think that steroids help. They definitely make you Superman at the plate, I guess. And to know those guys were taking it all the time and the way they were doing it. I assumed that was the way that he was putting up those big numbers.
Mark McGwire.
Oh my gosh! Now to watch him take BP, man, was incredible. I said Sammy was the best. Him and Barry Bonds were the two I'd watch, man, and was in awe watching their BP. They would hit balls farther than I've ever seen anybody hit.
I still remember the '99 All-Star game in Boston when he was in the home run derby. He was hitting balls out of Fenway Park over the green monster that were leaving the ballpark during the home run derby.
No doubt. I can only imagine, man, because when I saw him, he was in Seattle and Oakland. I'm sorry, St. Louis and Oakland. And he was hitting balls, man. Good gracious, man. Balls where you wouldn't even think. And those years, people were showing up for BP. I mean, the stands were packed just to watch him take batting practice. That's how impressive it was.
Right. Let's. You've given me a lot of your time. I do have a few more questions for you. First of all, I want to know, what do you think of this guy right here?
Oh man, that's the young guy right there, boy. He was young and hungry right there.
Right. That is a 1998 Matt Lawton.
Wow.
Word association, Matt Lawton. What do you, when somebody says Matt Lawton is a major league player, what do you want them to think of you as?
Man, I would want them to think of me as a good hitter, hard working guy that played hard. But I would say definitely fortunate. I felt, looking back on my career, I felt like I was the luckiest man ever to even make it to the major leagues. I had no business. I was 5'8". Like I said, came in the league with a tore up shoulder. I mean, I could always run, I could always hit, but man, if I wouldn't have, like I said, if I wouldn't have hurt my shoulder when I was 15, goodness gracious, who knows what kind of major league career I would have had.
If you were playing now, what kind of money do you think you'd be making, bro?
Man, Brandon Nemo. That's the name I'm saying out. I saw this cat the other day. He's a platoon player with the Padres. Now he's with the Rockies. Latin guy. He's making $7 million. Yeah. I mean, I'm not jealous of those guys. I'm not hating. I'm just saying I was born too early. Today's game is more built for my game. You know, when I played, like I said, even in arbitration that year, I remember the Twins comparing me to Sammy Sosa, to Tim Salmon. You know, guys that went out and hit for major power. I'm like, man, that's not me. You know, I'm not that type of guy. But today's game is built for my type of player. You know, guy that gets on base, guys gonna score runs, guys gonna hit for average, hit for a little bit of power. So I think today's game more suited for Matt Lawton.
You'd be making bank today.
No doubt about it, man. No doubt about it. No doubt. Today's game is definitely built for my type of player.
A couple more questions, then I'll let you go. I want to get your thoughts on the new rule changes. So a couple of the rule changes they had, obviously, bigger bases, pitch clocks, which seem to be working well in the minors. They've taken about 25 minutes or so off of each game. And then also limiting the shift on the infield, and then also limiting the amount of times a pitcher can throw over to first base with a runner on. That last one I really want to talk to you about, because you were always kind of a stolen base threat early part of your career. Do you think that we're going to see an increase in stolen bases from that?
You kind of broke up on me right there. But I'm assuming you're talking about the throwing over to first base, right?
Yeah. So do you think we're going to see an increase in stolen bases because of that rule?
Yeah, just watching spring training, I think guys are often running a little bit more. I think it's going to be like I said, today's game is built for fast guys. It's built for guys who's going to, get on base and score runs, trying to eliminate the strikeouts a little bit more. So I think we're going to see a little bit more stolen bases and hopefully a lot less strikeouts, and a lot more runs.
Do you think that's a lost art? Stolen bases, kind of like bunting. Like Rod Carew is always been a guy here in Minnesota who's talked about stolen bases and bunting. He kind of made his career off of that. Now stolen bases have the potential to come back. Do you think that there will ever be a time in the game where bunting will become popular again?
I don't know about bunting because guys, like I said, guys get paid to swing the bat. But I think this is the year you'll start to see an upswing in the
stolen bases.
I think guys will steal a few more bases this year. A lot of times, guys, I think they don't, steal a base. Baseball's such a long season. You get out there and you're running a lot, stealing a lot of bases, sliding a lot. He started to break fingers, and things started to happen. Guys kind of shy away from that. I think that's kind of the way guys kind of do whatever it takes to stay healthy. I think that's what happened to the game a little bit. But now, once they start. The guys pay the guys for stolen bases and scoring runs and getting on base the way they are now. I think the guys will step it up a little bit and bring a little bit more.
Now the Twins have always been lucky because a lot of teams have always had one starting pitcher after another who has been an ace, or they've always had positions where you go from one superstar or Hall of Famer to another to another to another. The Twins have kind of always had that with center field. Basically from the time Kirby played, you went from Kirby to Torrey for the most part to Byron Buxton. Now, can you talk about, obviously, you live in Mississippi, but I'm assuming you're still a Twins fan. Can you talk about a player like Byron Buxton and just how exciting he is, not only for you as a fan, but also as a former major leaguer?
Oh man, that guy, I'll tell you what, man, he plays I thought Torrey could play defense. I think he might be the top Tory out there. He runs in those gaps, and he makes plays that I don't think any other center fielder can make in the game. And now he's starting to bring the bat along with him. So
Yeah.
I think he's definitely more. He's gonna be an exciting player in years to come. I don't know. He seems to, the injury bug seems to bite him a little bit here or there, but I think if he can stay healthy, he's gonna be a player for the Twins for a long time, fun to watch.
Yeah, he's only had 1 year where he's played more than 100 games, and I think what they're going to try to do is play him 80 games this year in center field, like 40 games DH. If the Twins can get 120 out of him with that bat in the lineup, I think they'll be happy.
No doubt about it, man. His bat's really coming along. He's figuring out the game. I remember when he first came in the league, he reminded me a lot of Torrey. It took him a while to figure it out, but now I think he's got it figured out, and he's ready to put up some big numbers.
As a guy who used to steal stolen bases, obviously not to the extent that Byron does, but the old thing in baseball is you can't teach speed. Is that going to be kind of his biggest thing that's going to set him, that's going to take him to that next level of, like, because you mentioned it, he's chasing down balls that other guys just aren't getting because of his speed.
Yeah, he's got all the tools, man. And he's, like I said, his only downside, like we talked about, he's staying healthy. But if he can stay healthy, the sky's the limit. He's able to do it all, no doubt about it.
And the Twins signed Carlos Correa too. They have, they signed they gave Buxton $100 million last year. They gave Correa $200 million this year, and that might be weird for you to hear because when you were playing with the Twins, they almost got contracted. They didn't want to give out a $30 million deal.
Oh, no doubt, yes, sir.
So, do you think that Minnesota, having Buxton and Correa, do you think that if they have success this year, maybe next year, that it will be an attractive place for free agent players to want to play? Will that, even though, yes, the weather in Minnesota in April and into May is great and they play outdoors, but do you think that having two superstars, especially if the Twins can win the division and maybe finally win a playoff game for the first time since 2002, that'll attract top tier talent?
I really hope so, man, because Minnesota is one of those teams that I've always loved and cheered for, and I think they definitely put it all together. I mean, they got, I can't remember the guy's name, but they got a top notch pitcher from Miami. I think yes, sir. I think I love watching him pitch last year. I think he's going to really help the rotation a lot.
You saw him in the WBC for Venezuela too. He was slinging it.
Okay, yeah, he can do it now. He's one of those guys that when you're watching the game, down here, we definitely say, man, he's going to be one of those guys he's going to make the game go under. But he's not going to give up much.
That's right.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. He's one of those guys. Yes, sir. He's absolutely fun to watch, and I think he's going to bring a lot to Minnesota. And guys like Correa, by him coming back, I think guys are going to want to come there and play. So we're definitely cheering for the Twins down here, man. Hopefully getting those guys to the World Series here pretty shortly.
One more name association. My favorite player, other than Kirby Puckett and Torrey Hunter back then, and obviously Matt Lawton, was Brad Radke. Brad Radke, can you tell me about Brad? Just one, his mentality, two, how tough he was. He won 12 games on in the 97 season for the Twins when you guys only won 62 games all year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, man, the most calmest, chillest, laid-back guy you ever want to meet, man. He's definitely nothing bothered by Brad Radke. He's one of those guys that, if he go out and give up 3 or 4 in the first, so what? He didn't care. He'd come back and shut it down. And the thing was, man, he smoke and mirrors too. He didn't really have much as a pitcher. I'd go down there and watch him, and I stand in between, before the game, I'm standing in the box watching him, tracking pitches. I'm like, daggone, man, how's he getting guys out with this? He'd go out there and shove it up, man. And guys, he had that changeup working, throwing that fastball on the outside corner. For me, he was definitely the first pitcher that I played behind that could put the ball wherever he wanted to. He was definitely like a Greg Maddux. He could spot it up, and he knew exactly what he was doing. He was a technician on the mound.
If you were Major League Baseball Commissioner Matt Lawton, what is one rule that you would change about today's game?
Man, I wouldn't ban the shit. I liked the shift. I thought the shift was great as far as, but it kind of kept the numbers down. The hitters, it was tough for the hitters, but I think the guys should be able to adjust to that. You know, kind of like the Brandon Nemos of the world I talked about. Hey, if they gonna play me over here, I'm gonna hit it over here. And then I think, but you know, most guys, power hitter guys like Joey Gallo, they'll go up there with that one swing. Oh, I'm sorry, Joey Gallo's in Minnesota now. I'm talking about.
No, that's good. That's good. Yeah,
you know, yeah. But at the same time, you know, he's got that one swing, and he definitely wants to pull the ball every time. It made it tough for those guys to succeed.
What's as a fan, we always admire players, and I'm very fortunate in that I get to do a podcast and speak to former players like yourself and others. But as a player, what's one of the weirder things or more unusual things that you've ever had a fan ask you to sign? What's your weirdest autograph request?
Wow. I don't think I've had it. Not that I can think of. I can't think of anything just totally. Maybe a race car or something. Little. Okay. Yeah. Look, but other than that, I can't really think of anything off the top of my head that was really weird. Most times.
Nobody ever pulled a Ricky Bobby and had you sign their forehead or anything?
No. No, it was always a card or a hat or a baseball or something like that.
Okay. What do you think is baseball has kind of had a marketing problem for years? You see national ads with Pat Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers and LeBron and guys in the NBA. You don't really see that in Major League Baseball. What do you think baseball can do to expand the game globally and to market itself better?
I think it's definitely working towards that with the World Baseball Classic. I think they're doing a great job with that. Man, with all the Latin players coming over to play, I just think baseball is such a long season. 162 games, 9 innings. I think maybe with the pitch clock, making the games a little bit shorter, because you hear a lot of fans like, man, baseball's so tough to watch. So maybe in the next couple of years, we may see that. Maybe they're on the right track. Maybe they have all the ingredients working. So I'm definitely pulling for baseball to be one of the top games of the world. Like, kind of, I don't know if we'll ever get to where football is, but right. We can maybe surpass basketball. I think we'll be doing a good job.
So last question is, what's your World Series prediction for this year? Give me your World Series prediction for 2023.
Man, the one team or the two teams?
The two teams.
I think it's going to be the Padres and the Astros.
Padres and okay. Jose Altuve just got hurt.
Yeah, he'll be back though. He's gonna be down for maybe a month or so. But Dusty Jose Correa left. Who they bring in Pena. They got somebody though. That organization is so good over there in Houston, man. They're gonna plug somebody in there, and they're gonna keep the train rolling.
It's crazy too. They lost Justin Verlander, and they're still gonna win their division by a bunch of games.
No doubt. They got pitchers. They got pitchers lined up. Got guys with long hair, guys with short hair. They got whatever you like. They got them over there in Houston.
Before I let you go, can you give me one Kirby Puckett story? Give me your favorite Kirby Puckett story.
Man, I thought about this all weekend. I was like, man, I got to give him a good Kirby story, but I really don't have a good one. But I'll give you the one that kind of stuck out with me. We were playing cards one day and on the plane, and Kirby had won a bunch of money. Of course, he always have a bunch of money, but this year he cleaned out the pot. And he had this big Louis Vuitton bag that he would carry all the time. He carried that bag everywhere, on the plane, to the room, on the road. And I know it's full of money that day. And he was like, "Hey, Matt, come here. I need you to hold this bag for me overnight. I'm going to go, as soon as we get there, I'm going with my friend Joel. We're going to go out and have a few drinks. And I don't feel like taking my bag up to the room. I need you to take care of this bag and bring it back to me tomorrow." God dang, Kirby, what? So I was like, all right, I can take care of it. I'm knowing it's full of money. I'm scared to look at it to see how much he's got. But he told me, ain't nothing better than having my bag, or it's going to be you. I was like, all right, I got you. I go home, take the bag. Man, I'll tell you, that night I couldn't sleep. I was like, man, I don't want anything to happen to this bag. I had it in the bed with me. I didn't want anybody to come in my room and mess with it. And that was just to have the privilege of carrying his bag. I thought that was pretty cool.
Did you ever look in the bag?
No, I didn't look in it.
No?
I was too scared. But like I said, I know it had a bunch of money, and who knows what else is in that bag? But it was there, and I kept it in good hands.
Awesome. How much? A couple more questions actually. How much fan mail do you still get?
I get man, to be honest with you, I get quite a bit. And
Okay.
for some odd reason, I don't know how my address got out there a little bit. But I'm starting to get, man, every time I go to mailboxes, I get 1 or 2 pieces. So it's definitely coming out.
How do you feel about fans sending you fan mail? Is it something that you're like? Is it something you're like, I wish they didn't have my address? Like, how do you feel about fan mail?
You're breaking up on me again.
Sorry, how do you feel about the fan mail? Like, is that something
I don't mind it all. I
that's
don't mind
something
it all.
okay?
I don't know. Later in my career, now that my career's over, I feel, I feel, when I was playing, man, we used to get tons of it. I felt like, man, it was kind of hard to keep up with. But now, to get a couple pieces a week, I think it's pretty cool that my name's still relevant out there a little bit.
How much fan mail did you see Kirby get? Like, what was the most fan mail you saw that homeboy get?
Wow. Everybody used to have like one little slot of fan mail. Kirby used to have his own bucket. He used to have this like the mail carrier, the things you see at the post office. Yeah, he got tons and tons of fan mail, and I'll be honest with you, some days he signed it, some days he had somebody else sign it. But that was Kirby. He got so much of it, he couldn't keep up with it all.
Absolutely. Hey, I'm gonna have Doug Minkiewicz on here in a couple of weeks. Do you have any questions that you want me to ask Doug?
When's he gonna take me fishing? Ask Doug when's he gonna take me fishing. I know he's doing a lot of fishing these days. I'd love to go out with him one day.
All right, I'll ask him about fishing. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been my distinct pleasure to have former 2-time Major League All-Star Matt Lawton, former Minnesota Twin, among other teams, on the show today. Matt, thank you so much. This is you have no idea how, like, 15-year-old me right now is freaking out, man. I'm so excited.
Man, it was great, man. It's my first Zoom I've ever done. Man, sorry for all the complications at the beginning, but we made it happen, man.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. You are the absolute best. Thank you so much. And I'd love to have you on during the season. Maybe we can talk Twins and talk about what's going on in baseball.
No doubt. I'd love to do that. That'd be great.
All right. Sounds good. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode 2, season 2, episode 3 of the Show About the Show podcast. Find this podcast anywhere you get them: YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon. Download it now. Go out and support Matt Lawton. If you're down in the Gulf Coast area, stop in and say hi. Anything you got going on in your life, Matt, that you'd like to promote?
I'm fully retired now, man. So I'm just full-time dad. Got my son graduating in the summer from Mississippi State. I can't be any happier.
Awesome.
Yes,
and then I can't think of a better way to end it. Everybody, thank you for joining us. Matt, thank you so much. It's really been my distinct pleasure and honor. I really appreciate it, man.
Okay, man. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks.
Okay.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been season 2, episode 3 with Matt Lawton. Stay tuned for more episodes coming up soon. We'll see you down the road in podcast land.